And they were starting people that nobody knew. They were still fun to watch.
That's the thing. I mean, that's if the Raptors have had one kind of non-negotiable with the way they've drafted, it's in a lot of ways it's been that sort of you got to be you got to be a competitor. You got to have a motor. And Colin Murray-Boyle's defensive guy that they just drafted in the first round falls into that category and should add to the collection.
Yeah, so sometime over the next 55 minutes, we'll return back to the Raptors story and deal with the Max. Right now, let's segue over to baseball. Mike Farron is here, MLB Network host. Mike, welcome. How are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you?
Very good, thanks. So, with the Jays doing what they're doing and obviously fast forwarding by just, 20 days to the trade deadline, what do you see them doing?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, I think they'll be active. I thought that Ben Nicholson-Smith did a really nice job kind of handling this week on Sportsnet website, just a little bit of what they've done when they've been in the race over the last 5 years. So my guess is it's going to be a little bit of a couple things. I think they'll probably look for some offensive help. I think that's one of my more pressing concerns with them. I think that there are a couple of guys that might be a little bit out over their skis. And that the team, really isn't any different in terms of what their approach has been this year from where they were a year ago. And certainly there are guys who are having much better seasons, right? Vladdy's had a good year. Bobichette significantly better. Obviously, George Springer's been amazing. Kirk's been great to this point. But I think a little bit more offensive certainty would make some sense to me. Maybe in the outfield, adding somebody who can hit right-handed, I think, is probably somebody that fits the bill. And then I think, they're probably looking for the same thing that most every team is looking for, which is guys that can miss bats either in the rotation or the bullpen. I mean, that's the name of the game, is how do you get strikeouts? And while the pitching staff has been pretty good of late, I don't think they need to limit it just to say, hey, we need a bullpen arm or we need a starter. I think they're probably going to look at multiple arms. I would think that the idea is how can you shorten the game in the postseason, right? And offensively, how can you grind out at bats to put the most pressure on the opposing team? And so those will be the goals of what they're trying to achieve at the deadline. And as to who that means, I don't know, because we still don't know who's going to be selling and who's going to be selling what. That's the nature of 40% of the league making the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure, Mike. And that really is the tricky equation to crack here between now and July 31st is who will be the buyers, who will be the sellers. And I guess, we've got a lot of time on our hands here, 20-some days until that moment. But, what's your best guess? Like, one team that keeps coming up, because the Jays obviously have ties to them and they have some interesting, intriguing assets, the Cleveland Guardians. Start there. Like, what's your best guess on Cleveland?
Yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland, they've just won 4 in a row, right? They won the opener of the doubleheader against the White Sox today. They're still in the wild card mix. Cleveland's a little bit of a wild card in this because they're a team that will, and I'll steal the word that John Mozeliak, the head of operations for the Cardinals, loves to use, which is they love to arbitrage, right? So they will buy and sell at the same time. Just because they trade somebody doesn't mean they're punting a season. So they could be one of those fits. I would think that there probably is a little bit of bullpen talk. You've started to hear some rumors about Stephen Kwan. I think they're probably less likely to move him. That feels like hey, we're getting ready for another year down the line, because they're really good at having conversations with teams that they pick up further away. But, yeah, I mean, I think there's the possibility of anybody that's on an expiring contract there. And if the Jays were really willing to part with something significant that could help Cleveland in the future, that make their organization better, then maybe they would be willing to talk about Emmanuel Clase. But I wouldn't hold out much hope on that, especially, listen, they're playing the White Sox right now, who are the worst team in the American League. If they sweep that series, all of a sudden they've essentially erased that 10-game losing streak.
And of course, Mike, the Jays will not be the only aggressive shoppers, if indeed they decide to be aggressive shoppers. I mean, there's a lot of talk that the Yankees will get out there and really be looking to fill the holes they've got at third base and second base, and the Dodgers obviously always are buyers. The Tigers, having the year they're having. Like, who do you think the biggest threat is to the Blue Jays to sort of get in front of them with the shopping cart and maybe pluck the assets that they wish they could have acquired?
Yeah, so it's a good question, because the problem is that not everybody's looking for the same thing, right? So I don't know that the Jays are necessarily looking for third base help in the same way that the Yankees are. And while I think Yankee fans have their hearts set on Eugenio Suarez, I don't know that the Diamondbacks are really willing to trade him yet. You know, they're still, 5.5 games out in the wild card mix, and they feel like they have a talented team even with the injuries that they've had. So, I think the teams that tend to be aggressive, I think Seattle will be aggressive at the deadline. They have a very deep farm system. There is some pressure on that group to be able to make the playoffs kind of in the same way that there's been pressure on the front office in Toronto. I think San Diego is always aggressive. I think based on the fact that Buster Posey made the move early the way he did for Rafael Devers, I think you would have to assume that they are going to be aggressive as well. The one thing with San Francisco, though, is that bullpen may not be their most significant need, right? They're probably looking for offense before anything else. But Milwaukee has a very good team. The Cubs are in need of... The Cubs bullpen has been great, right? I think they have the third best ERA in the sport. But they have like the second or third lowest strikeout rate as a group. So again, another team that's going to be looking for bat missers. And the Phillies will always be aggressive. So, we can go down this list. And the problem is that there's just so many teams that are going to be looking for the same thing, which is strikeouts, ways to shorten the game from the back to the front in the postseason. And there's only a handful of those relievers that we think are going to be available. We don't even know if they're going to be available.
Yeah, and I guess the relevant point is the number of teams that would be selling. So if you're talking about, Baltimore, Oakland, and Chicago in the American League and in the National League, from Miami down, which is 5 teams. That's an 8-team market. How busy do you think this trade deadline's going to be?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen, and I wouldn't even count on Baltimore in that either because they're 6.5 games out of a wild card spot right now, right? So I know they traded Brian Baker yesterday, but I don't know that you can look at this as traditional buyers or sellers, and so I've told this story I think frequently in the last couple of weeks in interviews just because I think it's super relevant. I was talking to a GM about this a number of years ago about the trade deadline and what he wanted to do. And he said, if you think about it, there's really only 2 windows for us to improve our organization with external additions. It's the off season and it's that run up to the trade deadline, right? So I think if you look at it from that standpoint, there are some teams that would fit the mold of buyers and sellers at the same time. I know we talked about Cleveland like that, but, let's say Arizona were to move a player or 2. Well, they also want to win. They have 2 superstar players that are under long-term control in Ketel Marte and Corbin Carroll, and they have 2 key starting pitchers that are free agents after this year. So they may be buying as well. Cincinnati is a team that has bought and sold at the same time too. And those teams that you mentioned, like the Miamis, the Atlantas, the Washingtons, the Pittsburghs, certainly the Colorados, there may be a separate category. They don't have that many players that are super attractive to be able to acquire. And I put Colorado in a separate category because they just have never really done anything at the trade deadline. They have been... despite rumors upon rumors upon rumors for the last 5 years, they've mostly stood pat. Now, they swear that this time is going to be different, but I don't know if you guys were fans of the old Peanuts cartoons, but Lucy always swore that she was going to hold the football for Charlie Brown, too. So until the Rockies actually kick the football, I'm not sure that I'm going to buy the fact that they're in this, right? Like that they're in it to sell. So I do think that complicates matters, and it could make for... I would say a modest deadline, but I'm assuming that there are going to be a volume of trades, and a lot of them are going to involve relievers, and some of them are probably going to be names where you go, now, who was that again?
Yeah, that's a fair point. Hey, Mike, obviously we're coming up to the All-Star break here. The home run derby is, a polarizing event, I would say. Some love it, some hate it. I happen to be in the former category, but what, do you have